You might remember that a little while ago we got the chance to push and prod around the new Jeep Avenger, and though we came away impressed by its interior and its technology, the only thing we couldn't do was drive it. That all changes today as we've come to the south of Spain to find out what is arguably Jeep's most important new car is like from behind the wheel. Also, we're going to find out whether or not you should consider the new Avenger if you are in the market for a new EV. So stick around to find out. It's nice to find that the Avenger's interior has remained largely the same from that initial car that we looked at a little while back. So we've still got the same great level of practicality with loads of storage options and a deep section here, which is going to be ideal for putting your phone or just those items you want to keep close to hand. As before, we've got two large screen setups and the driver's display comes in either 12.5 or 7 inches in size, depending on which specification you go for. I'm not too sure about the location of the switchgear down here for the gears because it just doesn't feel that intuitive. But having said that, the ones for the heating and ventilation are ideal and they're nice and chunky, so you can get them when you're on the move very easily. I'd only say that this plastic cover for this cubby section down here feels a bit flimsy, and though you can remove it, I think you're going to lose that very quickly. However, underneath, you've still got two USB-C charging ports and a 12-watt socket in the middle. And practicality is what shines through here as it did before. There's loads of space to store everything you need. It's nice that despite its relatively compact footprint, you still get plenty of space inside the rear part of the cabin in the Avenger. Headroom is what shines through here. There's loads of space. I'm just on a 6 foot and I've got plenty of room for my head. And then when I come down here, my knee room is relatively tight. This seat is in my driving position, but I've got plenty of room for my feet. The only issue I have here is that there is quite a large transmission tunnel. The Avenger will be sold with conventional combustion engines in other markets, and that means that that person sitting in the middle is getting something of a short straw. That said, you still get a USB-C charger in the middle. The only thing I think is a bit of a shame is that the practicality you get in the forward part of the cabin isn't cascaded back here. So apart from the seat back pockets, there's not really anywhere to put anything. You do get ISOFIX points at each side though, so that's a good point if you have child seats to fit. But the aperture of the door is relatively slim, so that's worth bearing in mind if you're frequently getting those child seats in and out. At 380 litres, the boot space that you get from the Avenger by far exceeds the amount that you'd get from a car like the Hyundai Kona Electric. And that means that there's plenty of space for your luggage. And the good thing is that it's nice and square, so it's easy to access too. There's also a handy little underfloor section where you can keep the charging cables. There's not too much of a low lip either, so putting those heavier items in isn't going to prove too much of a struggle. And I like the fact that these areas here have been clad in plastic so that you're not going to get too damaged when you are putting those bulkier items in there. Overall, it's quite a usable space. And the most important thing is it's nice and square and uninterrupted by the sides, so you can get the maximum amount of stuff in there that you can. The new Avenger uses the same platform as the one that you'll find underneath cars like the Vauxhall Mokka-e, which means it uses a 54 kilowatt hour battery, and Jeep says that that's enough to give 248 miles of range. Now, courtesy of 100 kilowatts of charging speed, you should be able to do a 0 to 80% charge in just over half an hour when you're hooked up to a properly rapid charger. Now, Jeep also says that if you connect it to an 11 kilowatt home charger, that a full charge will take around about 5 hours. So if you've got a 7 kilowatt one, expect a slightly slower speed or expect a slightly longer time. Now, the Avenger isn't the most powerful of EVs out there with 156 brake horsepower, and that's sent just to the front wheels alone. We've also got a variety of different driver modes, and even in normal, the car is actually limiting the amount of power that you get in order to extend the range. You can get the most amount of power that you want by kicking down on the throttle and pressing it through its full travel, and then you get the extra boost of speed. That comes as standard when you switch into sport mode, but actually normal mode feels just about lively enough. On some of these steeper roads that we've been on today, it has at times felt like it needed just slightly more power, and you do need that kick down to get the most out of it and to make sure you're making decent progress. One thing I have found on these twistier roads is that the Avenger sometimes struggles to get its power down without corrupting the front wheels. And what I mean by that is that when you're coming around a steep or sharp corner and you try and get on the throttle too quickly, you can feel the front end just washing and just going slightly light. It's only a minor niggle, and it's certainly not going to destroy the whole driving experience of the car, but I think that will become more pronounced when it's in the wet. Having said that, the overall driving experience is nice and pleasant. We've got light steering, we've got good visibility up front, although the rear visibility is a little bit tight because of the large pillars and the slim screen. But it's an easy car to pilot, and I think it's going to be very useful around town, particularly because it's quite a small, short and narrow car, which means it's going to be ideal for parking in tighter spaces. Of course, being a Jeep, they've included quite a lot of off-road technology, so you've got different modes to help out when you're travelling on surfaces like sand or gravel. But let's be honest, this is a front-wheel drive electric vehicle. It's not going to be the primary choice for those going off-road. But having said that, the good breakover and takeaway angles that you get with this car, as well as the short overhangs, have actually meant that today I've been taking it over some pretty rough drops into car parks for our shoot, and it's dealt with them really nicely. It hasn't crunched or it hasn't scraped at all, and although that might not be an application that everyone uses, I think that definitely if you're dropping off larger curbs, or if you're just trying to enter or exit a really steep car park, and that'll prove very useful. The brakes in this car are a little bit squashy for me. Just at the top of the pedal it feels like there isn't enough response, and then as you press through it, it's not getting that kind of gradual pedal feel that you want. You can press the B mode down on this button here, and that activates a more aggressive regenerative braking setup, and though it won't bring the car to a complete standstill, you can feel it slowing the car down. And that's quite nice when you're on hilly descent sections like this, because you don't have to use the brakes so much. You can let off the throttle and just allow the regenerative braking to trim your speed off. And that's quite useful, and that'll be good in traffic too, because it means you won't have to constantly be on and off the brakes. You just let off the throttle and it'll do it for you. It's a nice quiet car too. I have noticed on some of the rougher roads that we've been travelling on today that the firm ride has come through, and it's a factor that often rises its head, and it's a factor that you'll often find in many EVs because they're just slightly weightier than usual petrol or diesel versions, and over craggy, more urban surfaces this has felt quite firm. This road is beautifully smooth at this point, so I can't really comment on this section because the car is being helped out by the road. But certainly on those slower sections I felt that yes, this Avenger is just a little bit firm. However, the refinement is good and the level of wind noise is kept to a decent amount. There's a small level being generated by the pillars here, and you notice that when you're travelling on the motorway, but for everyday speeds and everyday driving it's all being nicely isolated, and you feel that you've got that quiet electric powertrain and it's not being interrupted by any massive squeaks, rattles, wind or tyre noises. I quite like the shape of this steering wheel too. It's not overly thick, and it means you can navigate your way around quite reassuringly. I've got some controls on my steering wheel here too for all your usual aspects such as your phone and volume, and they're all within nice easy reach of your thumb, so there's nothing too much to get acquainted with in that sense. When you're climbing some of these hills you can feel that the front wheels are just struggling to maintain the traction too much. If you apply too much throttle, and I think certainly in the wet you're going to notice this car might have a tendency to spin up a little bit. But having said that, 154 brake horsepower is not a lot of power even by this size of car's standards in this segment. As I mentioned, if you do just apply a little bit too much throttle in these bends when you're coming out, you can feel the front tyres just struggling to scrabble with the power that's running through them. Again, it's more of a niggle rather than an outright issue with this car, and I think it would certainly be exacerbated by wet weather, but it's just something you kind of notice, particularly if you're just trying to make a nice little bit of progress through some nice roads like we're on today. The Jeep Avenger finds itself in quite a curious position. Around £35,000, it's slap bang in the middle of the prices of its rivals, and it also doesn't go above and beyond when it comes to range and charging speed. But what it does do is really deliver where it comes to practicality. I think the forward part of the cabin has loads of storage options that are going to be great for families. And then the back is a little bit restricted in terms of where you can put things. I think overall it delivers that space that you want. And then there's the boot area, which is pretty decent too. And that combines with a little bit of character to make a car that is definitely worth considering if you are looking for a new EV. Thank you for watching this Motors.co.uk new car review on the Jeep Avenger. Now, if you have enjoyed this review, please leave us a like below and let us know in the comment section what you think of this car. Would you pick it as your next EV? And as always, please remember to subscribe to the Motors.co.uk YouTube channel and hit that bell icon so you're notified every time we upload a new review.